Okay, my UFO story. When I was in high school in 1982, and I was a junior, me and a friend of mine, Stacy Woods, who has passed away now, were sitting out past the high school at this place we called the Sanctuary, and it was really down a dirt road, and you turned off into somebody's property, went over a berm, and no one could see you, and we all just hung out there and partied. And so it was the refuge or the sanctuary, we called it. And there was a fence line that ran straight down from us back towards pretty much the setting sun, and that's the direction that the highway would be in. And you could actually even see a portion of the highway from where we were at whenever we were there. And we'd go out there and, just doing kids and party things and stuff. So we're sitting out there one day, and at the end of this, a plane starts coming in at the end of this fence line, pretty much in line with it, kind of. It just started coming in at an angle to us, but pretty much right at us. And Stacy and I had both, gone out and sat by E-Systems, and he knew my dad worked out there, and that I could pretty much name all the planes that they had. And they were working on the president's airplanes there and RC-135s and things like that. So I was going to see if I could identify it when it came in. And it was kind of evening like this, maybe even a little worse, to where up above us was dark, but there was still a light glow in the distance of sunset, and this started fading as it came in. As it came in, I could kind of see a little bit of a glow or reflection off the bottom side of the craft. Quite often you would see this on airplanes due to them being white or even the silver that a lot of the military airplanes were. So you could see this little glowing off of it, and I could see a few lights on the bottom of it. And but it was way off. I mean, the thing was smaller than that thing there is in the right in the sky at this point. And at that point, it seemed like it came into shadow slightly because it turned dark, and then the lights went off. And I told him that's weird. The lights go off because they have them to land. And it started to come across us a little bit diagonal, and it seemed to turn a little bit to our left a little more. It was coming right over my left shoulder, and then it turned a little more to the left, and as it did, we were looking up at the sky, and so it looks like the left picture now, and you could see all of the stars. Now in this picture you see all this whiteness that's inside the black of the craft. I did not see that at all. All that I could see was a solid black outline like a piece of black crepe paper, and you could see where it was blocking out the sky. And the sky was that gray charcoal black, but this thing was infinity black, and you could see how it was blocking out the stars, and it was definitely a delta shape, very much like this right here, very much like our B-2 bomber. The odd thing was, is Stacy and I freaked out totally, and we ran home and told my dad. Well, my dad, being a military career man and in electronic intelligence himself, and had a security clearance that was way high, I showed up and Stacy and I told him about this, and he looked at us and just started glaring. And then the look on his face changed slightly, and he said, "Y'all are probably just high or something or been drinking." Which, that was not my dad's vernacular that he would use if he thought that was what was going on. And it kind of was, but the point being taken that after that he told us that we probably just saw something else and that we should probably just go on back out and party, which my dad never said that before or after in his life. Now, later, my dad and I used to play golf all the time, and I asked him about that. And I said, once the B2s came out, I said, was that a B2 that we saw? And he said, no, that wasn't a B2 that we saw. Okay, and I said, do you think you know what it is? And he goes, if there was something that was like that, I couldn't tell you about it. Now, there was another time after this that I actually referred to back to that again one time. Him and all of his golfing buddies were out there, and they were talking about something, and they brought up UFOs, and I brought it up again to him. And he just kind of said to me as he looked away that there's a lot of things that people don't know about, and if you're not in the right group, you'll never even get to know about it, and could be right up under your feet. And then I had to be quiet because he was fixing to hit his golf shot. And I sat there, thought about that. Then I thought, I shouldn't pry. There's not a good response to this, but he's not gonna be able to tell me anything even if he did. So in the experience I had, it was one of those sunsets that was like this, where it had just set, and then you could see that it was gradiating up like this. And if I was to look behind me now, you could already see stars. And it started to get a little darker. And you noticed about the tree there, so that there was a light. In fact, if I remember correctly, there was two little gleams you could get off of things, and one had gone out to the right. And I said, well, that's just a commercial thing. That's the normal path they would take off. And it was kind of odd for one to come this way, but it seemed like it was heading our way. And instead of going up, up, up in the atmosphere as it came your way, and by the time it got to us, the thing was 20, 30,000 feet up. That's uh, we've got to be about 65 miles away from DFW Airport and probably 75 away from Carswell if it's actually coming to E-Systems, which would have been in the town that we lived in Greenville. And they have ability to get 747s and everything there. They work on the president's airplanes. We used to watch them land over us and things, but this dot had come in and gotten to the point where it was really fairly close. I'm guessing, like to the tree line here, somewhere in here, and it was slowly rising up, but it was also getting brighter and brighter, and what we were getting was the reflection up off the bottom of it, as it came in, and it would be, showing us its bottom just a little bit as it's going. And I thought the thing was metal or whatever, but as it came in and got closer, the sky had darkened. It only takes 5 minutes or so for the sky to darken from here. And Stacy and I were talking, and I said, "Here one comes in, and it's not getting up high in the air. Maybe it's coming here to E-Systems." And he said, "Yeah, it'll be dark by the time you get here." And I said, "Yeah, but I'll be able to tell by the outline shape of it, and also, the sound of the engines and stuff. If it's close enough." With the shape, and stuff like that. So it started to look a little darker, and I could tell it was coming in pretty fast and stuff, and so could he too. And like you see that little light maybe that's just right down here, and then on there, by now this thing was up to about here, and what happened was you could see by then it was three distinct lights on the bottom of it, almost like it already had its landing lights on prematurely. And it was common for them to flip them on when they came in, but very uncommon for them to have them on that far out. And he would have been, coming up in the sky about in this range here. And Stacy went and leaned into the car, turned off the radio, and he grabbed a beer. He goes, "Beer," and hands it to me. And so I pop the beer as this thing comes in. And we're taking sips off the beer, and it's slowly coming in. What's funny about it is it seemed to be coming at us rapidly. I was like, "Man, this thing's coming. Maybe it's a 747. And he goes, "How can you tell the difference?" And I said, "Well, you can tell the difference between the mount of the engines and everything. You've seen a few of these come over, and some of them have four, and some of them have two, and you know what a 747 shape is, and you can pretty much tell if it's a slight angle. Unless it comes straight over the top, you won't be able to see the bubble on top and things." And we're yammering about this, and this thing comes over and starts to get about in here, and all of a sudden the lights go off of this thing totally. Now it was just three dots in the sky at that point, way off in the distance, so it's like dot 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 of light, dink dink dink, like that. But it ends up disappearing. And whenever it does, it's black. There's no gleam under the bottom of it anymore. It's gotten way past the point of having any slight gleam or anything under the bottom of it. And I realized that the gleam was probably even those landing light or those light type things that it had going facing out in front of it. And instead of down even, it was more like facing about at us. Ground level, almost like just a light in your face, if you will, so you can't get the shape of the craft, maybe. I don't know. Looking back, that's what I was thinking. And as it started to come across the sky, right over through here, you could already see stars up through here, and then it was, as you kept going, it was just black. And as the thing came over, I saw that it was a shape that was really pretty much, like a boomerang thing, something like this. That I don't know if I can even do it here. Oh, something, it really wasn't such a triangle. It looked more like a shark tail or a dolphin tail. It was symmetrical, but it didn't look like the B-2 bomber. Now, this was before B-2 bombers were known by people at all, and they were apparently working on them. And it didn't have the little skinny wings that looked like two rulers sticking out with the back going jag, 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 jag either. It had this smooth going into it. And since then, I've seen a B-2 come over at about the same height over Addison Airport and during an air show, and this thing was larger than that. I would say good 20% larger than that, and it was probably about 1,500 foot up, maybe 2,000, somewhere in that range, and you could still tell it was visibly larger than that. The amount of stars that it blotted out as it went across, and it went across slow, slow, slow. I mean, it was coming at us fast. Once the lights went off, it just slowed. And then the weird thing was, is We turned off the radio. We're listening for the sound of the engines and stuff, and there is nothing. And this thing makes no noise at all. And he says, "Man, what is that?" And I said, "Shh, listen." And we just sit there looking at this thing slowly going over. It's probably 150 miles an hour at the most, and maybe 200, probably about 150. And at that height, it may have been, yeah, somewhere around there. And it went across us, and you would hear the sound of the engines before it got to you, but it would get a lot louder right as it got to you. And when it passed, and we're looking more up its ass a little bit or towards its tail, you would hear them a lot more. And we heard nothing whatsoever. And it just gave me chills and stuff. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and he goes, "What the hell is that?" And I go, "I have no idea." And he goes, "Oh my God, should we call the police?" And I said, "Let's go talk to my dad real quick first." So we ran to my house, and that's where that thing came from. But let me get another picture of the aspect of it too. Just throw this in here real quick. This is an actual B-2 Stealth coming over the top at Rose Bowl. And see how the front edge of that is all lit up in the sky? The rest of it's all black. It's almost like the leading edge of it's lit up. What I saw was more like the leading edge had lights onto it, and it looked more like there were three of them facing out towards you. But, and of course, this is veered right, and ours would have been veered left and farther off. Let me get a better aspect of what it looked like. I'd say the shape, instead of being that B2 that we just looked at, would be more like this right here. But you know how this has that real pointy tail sticking out. I didn't notice any, if it's maybe a small amount of tail bend at the middle of it. It seemed like it had more of just a dolphin tail to it, but that little small ridging in the middle, not so much of a big spike. And of course, this is so much smaller than the thing that we're talking about. I mean, one of these would have fit on each one of the wings comfortably of what I'm talking about. So this would be much more reminiscent of the shape, by the way. I'm looking into trying to find a picture for y'all of like the aspect of the way that it looked coming across us. And I found this, which is some mock-up of some experimental aircraft they were supposed to have been making and stuff. And of course, it's got red China markings on it. And you can see the representation of how big it is versus a F-14, or is that F-15? And it's quite a difference in size and scale there. That would have been still about 20% short of the size that I'm talking about, though. There are quite a few experimental aircraft that we've worked with that are very triangular shaped, but nothing of the size that I'm talking about. And of course, they all seem to make noise, and you wouldn't turn off the lights. I mean, one of the nightmares that I had whenever the lights went off is that their system failed, and then when I didn't hear any sound, I thought they were going to float in and have to land somewhere and stuff. And Dad didn't think anything of it, but I was thinking, I was pretty sure that right after I left, after he told us to go ahead and go out back out and party, that that he probably called E-Systems to find out if anything was going on or if everything was kosher. And the Germans definitely had some of these triangle aircraft that we're talking about, and we messed with flying wings too, of course. I'll probably show you a picture of one of those here in a minute, but you can see there's a smaller one that's that one about the size we were looking at before. And look at this huge thing that's up here. I mean, that's that's about the size of ours that we're looking at and everything. But no, ours, the one I'm thinking of that I saw was about 20% bigger than that. It definitely had some size on it. And as the thing came over at the angle that it was, I can't seem to find an aspect that's about it. You could say flying over like this right here. Say the thing was flying over, although, that looks fake as hell. It looks like somebody just painted black where it's supposed to be. You can see how the little skinny arms come out here and come out down there, and how that's really not what I'm talking about. It was smooth coming across it like that. And as it started to go across us, way up in the sky, much more like this effect, but way off to the left of us, off to the left. So we were looking at it from almost the aspect where you would see it like this, and that it was blocking out. The sky was really just a midnight blue at that time, and as black as this thing is, you can see it here, and that's the way it was. You could definitely tell the outline on it. And I was really just in fear this thing had just totally lost its power plant out of it right as it started coming over us, whenever the lights went off, and it was in glide mode all the way across us. And it seemed to be aimed up towards Z systems and turning that way. in the sky. So I was like, uh-oh, and stuff. And then also it just didn't look like anything I had seen before or anything. And I wanted to go and question my dad about it, And I had just gotten out to have a night of partying and stuff. And lo and behold, this was a big brakes on it. So it would have been coming at us kind of off to the left like this. Now, this is very close at this point. And I realize this is probably 1,000 meters away or so, but it would have been 3 times as far away as it's veering to our left and coming across up. And of course, it's higher in elevation than this seems to be to the photographer. It was, 1,500 to 2,000 feet when it went across. But another thing, too, is even though it was that far back, like I'm saying, it was this size. So it was huge. And whenever it banked over and went silently across in this hover kind of craft mode, it was just intense. So this is really about the only one that has the shape that I'm talking about, where it really doesn't scallop so bad in the back. It does have a little maybe bump back in the middle of the back, and it just has the swept wings on it. I would swear that the one that I saw would be a little bit more of, this seems to be almost a 90-degree angle or almost a 45-degree angle, maybe 50 degrees. I'm going to go with mine was like 52, 53, a little bit wider than that of a look. And at the tips that you see there, it would have been wider also. And these little areas where it gets kind of skinny right up in here and stuff, it would have come out wider, farther back, and been about in here as it swept across the back. It would have just been thicker through here, if you follow me, and then came across the back in the same manner and about the same scallop, but they would be thicker at the edge of the wings slightly. It didn't come to quite that point effect. It's almost there. That's not quite. And of course, if you were huge standing in front of it, it probably doesn't look like it's a point, but still, the effect that mine had was more of a rounded edge. This looks like it's extreme dolphin tail pointy edge, and mine had a little more where rounded edges off to the edge. And I couldn't tell if there were little spikes or little pinnules sticking off or anything, and I sure couldn't see anything that looked maybe even like these little engines back here and stuff. The thing was just a smooth object, and fatter in the middle, down the center of it, than it was out on the side walls. But short of that effect, you couldn't get any shape real off of this thing at all. And again, it flew at a speed that I knew, being an Air Force brat, that things wouldn't stay in the air. If this thing was a glider and real light, it might, but that's not what we're looking at. This thing had millions of pounds. Oh, millions of pounds. No, it had, thousands and thousands of pounds, but it was just way too large of an object to perhaps hold itself aloft in any way, shape, or form and glide in from there. I was worried it wasn't going to make it to E-Systems. There's been a lot of experimental triangle and wing aircraft through the ages, and Germany tried them, and America tried some pretty wicked, weird little things too, and wings, and the thing that's in Indiana Jones is kind of that way and stuff. But there's really nothing. There's nothing that has that exact shape that I'm talking about, and then the ones that actually do somewhat don't actually contain that amount of volume, or they're not big enough. They're nowhere near the size that I'm talking about of craft that would actually be what we're talking about. I've seen a B-2 Stealth, and whenever you get one, I think there's a picture here where one of them is next to a actual B-52 bomber, and you can see the scale. I found a picture just about the aspect of what I'm talking about, and this is it. And you can see how this is really squared off toward chunk, 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 chunk. It almost looks like a flying piece of wood, and this wing looks even longer than this one somehow and stuff, and it just looks weird. Mine didn't look like that at all. It rounded off here at the corners, it sunk in the tail part and rounded off here, and it would have again been larger than this, probably 20% larger than this. I'm familiar with what a B-52 would look at coming over at about that aspect and ratio, and of course its apparent size to us too. And that really isn't it. I'll show you a comparison here. Okay, hopefully you can see it here. A stealth bomber versus the B-52 bomber is really a little bit smaller in wingspan. It has a little more girth in the middle of wingspan. Area effect, but it's a little smaller. What I'm talking about is something that is as bigger as the B-52 is, that much bigger again, but has that triangle shape that would actually sit over the top of that B-52 and make it to where you couldn't see it right now. And I can't find that.